From the National Institutes of Health Clinical Center.
This is Discovering Hope in Science.
Welcome to Discovering Hope in Science. I'm Dan Silber. I'll be your host today. Today I'm with Dr. Brad Wood, Senior Investigator at the Center for Interventional Oncology at the NIH Clinical Center. Thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So today we're talking about...
And you didn't introduce my coffee. Very important part of the team.
Absolutely. What are you drinking today?
Anything. Caffeine.
I heard that this morning you were performing an ablation.
This morning we did an ablation with robotics, which is pretty cool. And robotics and image-guided therapy in general in interventional radiology, interventional oncology, provides a level of standardization, automation, reproducibility that's really important to the field. It's important to be able to get a uniform treatment out to the public.
What are some of the challenges in that process?
Humans are always the problem, right? No, it's. I say that facetiously, but hand-eye coordination is a skill set. Takes some time to improve on in the grand scheme of a long career. And in an ideal setting, everybody would be able to do this procedure in a similar fashion with a level of exquisite accuracy that lets you hit a pinpoint immediately in 3 seconds from way away with a long chopstick of a needle and an ablation device, which cooks the tumor, for example, every time. And if you can do that every time in 10 seconds, it should be better than any human factor, which is subject to their variability, how much coffee you've had that day, what's going on in the procedure room, all kinds of different variability, skill sets.
So how do robots assist in this process?
So a robot lets you implement the actual treatment plan. So it lets you start soup to nuts, start to finish, thinking about how to approach in this case, a cancerous lesion that you see on a CT scan or an MRI or a PET scan, lets you approach that problem in a mathematical way and lets you get from a skin entry to a tumor in exquisite accuracy and precision, both very rapidly. So it lets you implement a treatment plan. It then lets you go back afterwards and look and verify that you've actually confirmed that you've got your margin, that you've treated what you set out to do. And that's a very important part of the whole process for tumor ablations, which we're learning now that is a critical piece of quality ablation. And to do so without that element is a little bit less quality, a little bit less favorable outcomes, and this just makes sense.
Recently, you had published this article, Fusion Technologies for Image-Guided Robotic Interventions, and I was hoping you could walk us through that a little bit.
I guess fusion technology is the ability to register, fuse, match, or bring multimodality information together when you're doing things to the patient, for the patient, with the patient, at the patient's bedside, at the time you need that information most, which is when you're treating the patient. So if we have exquisite XYZ coordinates of exactly what that spatially looks like, that patient and that organ and that tumor in relation and all the anatomy in relation to each other, it just makes sense that you're going to do things better and you're going to be able to have better outcomes. So this technology has evolved largely over the past almost 3 decades. And it's really, technology takes a long time to actually be adopted. And this has been adopted in little pieces, little elements, and little bits and pieces, but it's still realizing its full potential. And being able to use all that information and dance between multiple modalities, functional or metabolic image versus an anatomic or morphologic image, and they're different information, and being able to have all that information at your fingertips when you're placing a needle or a catheter or devices or drugs to a local area, it just makes sense. It makes beautiful sense. And it's actually based on a combination of the physical and the biological sciences. So high school physics, much of this is, which some of the devices we use are electromagnetic tracking, which goes back to the Faraday principle, which is something we learned in high school physics, where you have a tightly wound wire. In the presence of a magnetic field, a very weak magnetic field, not like an MRI, elicits electricity. That electricity varies according to where that magnet is pointing. And if you alternate those magnetic fields rapidly in a very sub-second basis, it elicits a little different electrical current, because magnetism and electricity are related. That's the high school physics part. What we do with this is it turns a device, an ultrasound, a needle, a patient's chest, a robot, a catheter, it turns it into a tracking device, like a GPS on your phone, so you can see where you're going in your car. And to do these procedures, image-guided therapy, without this technology or similar technology like it, it's like driving a race car through the Italian Alps without your headlights on at night. And then all of a sudden, you have the technology and you see where you are in real time while you're doing the procedure. It's really eye-opening.
And then how did you sort of decide to follow this particular set of modality or this set of technologies? And what you do?
The development inherently is what NIH is best suited to do, in the intramural research program especially. And what we do well is interdisciplinary thinking and interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary science. Team science brings different roles together to the table, shoulder to shoulder, and the currency is the discovery, the innovation, the papers sometimes, but it's the ideas. That's our currency. We're not getting paid by the patient. We're trying to develop things to improve and meet an unmet clinical need and address that need with technology. So in that case, you're bringing the benefits of multiple specialties, disciplines, thought processes, ways of thinking. In this case, it evolved from biomedical engineering, interventional radiology, medical oncology, surgical oncology, urologic oncology, and coming together in a place like NIH lets us take advantage of each of those assets and skill sets and expertise without having to own the patient, without having to compete for anything. We're in this together. Everybody comes to the table, team science at its best.
It's amazing and very inspiring. What next? I mean, that's one thing here, but what's the next stage for this suite of technology?
Well, I think one thing that people don't always realize in medicine and the science of think is the clinical adaptation, the adoption, the translation. What's the uptake rate? How do you get it out to the community setting? How do you get it out to a global setting? How do you get it out to the rural practitioner or the non-hospital practitioner? And sometimes that's the hardest to appreciate, but it's the most important because it actually determines the impact. And the impact is only as good as the technology gets adopted. So we see many technologies that are over-engineered and expensive or get sequestered into just high-end users and certain facilities, and that goes against the grain of what we should be about and what we are about, and that's getting the public health dollars spent in a good fashion to meet the needs of the public and the public health as a whole. And so getting it out in the community, getting it commercialized, we take advantage of the Bayh-Dole Act, which allows for cooperative research and development agreements. That's a fancy way to say we can jump in with industry and take an idea, implement it, check it out in patients, prove that it meets an unmet clinical need, and help them to prove its value, help them to commercialize it, help them to get it into a setting, into a platform that makes sense for everybody and that actually gets adopted. So we don't have control over all those things, obviously, because once you're in the market factors, it changes things sometimes. It has to match a business plan, for example. But once you get it past that hurdle and have the first in human done, which is something we do well here, we like to follow that technology and prove its clinical utility and prove where it helps and prove that it adds value and show how it adds value and then show how it compares to the standard therapy. So an ultimate application does that whole gamut of the whole spectrum of deployment.
Amazing. So thank you so much for coming here and chatting with me. Is there anything else? What have I left out? What do you want to? What would you like to tell anyone who happens to be listening?
I think the field of interventional radiology is super cool. Interventional oncology is a subspecialty within that field. I think the people expect miracles, and sometimes the technology sounds way out there, but it's not all that far-fetched. Image-guided therapy brings together devices, drugs, image guidance, and an exquisite symphony and orchestra of technologies that makes sense for the patient. And it's what excites me, and it's a great field to go into. I think some of the space within artificial intelligence and some of the robotics, the terminology sounds super scientific, far out, sexy, advanced, and it is, but it's really little defining where it's going to help, little incremental pieces where it helps, which is the fun part.
Well, it's a delight to have been able to chat with you. Once again, this is Discovering Hope in Science. I'm Dan Silber, and
this is Mike Doctor.
Dr. Brad Wood. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.